Hey family, Grand Rising,
Greetings, everyone.
one love. Hope you're having a beautiful day. Uh, About to be joined by our friend Ash Ritter from Black Sage Botanicals to just do a little bit of a live about desert plants that we love and herbalism and just kind of catch up with an old friend. So we'll wait for people to come in here for a minute and wait for her to show up. And in the meanwhile, we have some of our favorite plants right here. We were trying to decide and think about all the plants that we might want to talk about, and there becomes too many, which is the problem for every herbalist. There's Ash. Let me invite her here onto the live. Chimayo. So we have very different plants. We have some similar plants and some different plants, and so we're just gonna geek out. Here comes Ash.
Whoop, howdy,
Looks.
partners. Hold on one second.
Hi, Ash.
Hi. Hold on, I'm futzing with my phone here.
Yeah, no worries.
There we go.
Hey, there you are.
Hey.
Yay!
Sister, how are you?
Really good. Hold it. You know what? I can't see your video, so hold on one second. I'm gonna do some computer magics.
Cool.
There we go. I'm great. How's it going, my friends?
We're doing well.
Pretty good. We're indoors now because winter's coming here. It was a little bit rainy this morning. It's really cloudy outside today and really cold.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we got some weird weather going on over here too. It's not sunny and bright.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How's things with you? What's new?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm staying I'm staying in the eye of the storm, you know what I mean?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
Very much, very much
Huh?
so. Very much so. Us too. I think that's everyone on the planet at the moment is like trying to keep that center, that peaceful stillness in the
Yes.
midst of all the whirlwinds of change. But maybe we can share some of our herbal allies and practices and stuff with people to, you know, uh, do what we can to support.
Yeah. Is there anything that you're really resonating with right now to just help you stay in that calm space?
You know what's supporting me the most right now? I mean, every day is a new day. So first of all, that's a support system in itself, is giving myself that permission to say every day is a new day. Like yesterday I may feel like a wrathful goddess and today I may feel like a bunny rabbit, and all of that is valid and important. And but what's really helping me is making offerings and praying and doing altar work with plants. You know what I'm saying? It's like finding ways to burn the herbs that are burnable, to drink the herbs that are drinkable, to pour libations to not just my ancestors who've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, but the land, the all peoples, all relations, all beings.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, like
Oh.
I guess that's not a specific answer, but yeah, I've been doing a lot of work with herbs and with fungi to pray, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I feel the
Yeah.
same for sure. It's kind of like when you have a family, children or no children, but you're part of the family and you resonate with many or one or none at any given moment. And
Mm,
trying to find your space in that connective space.
mm,
Um,
mm,
yeah, just being aware each day, each moment of what's going to be life-giving, life-supporting, and what's going to be you know the opposite.
yeah. I mean, and that's like the beauty of this season too, is being in that space of giving thanks for fertility and the power and potency of creation in all of its facets and forms. And then same way, like recognizing that turning in and turning into the dark and turning into the underworld, and that's part of the deal, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
for me too, it's about like getting right with the fullness of creation means being always being life affirming and recognizing like the beauty and the power and the potency and the like utility of that turning into the depths and the dark and the murky and the unknown, and uh, the regenerative new connections that are made in that like sort of mycorrhizal dark mix. You know,
the world of Earth, you know, and turning in, you know, the winter and death, Scorpio season, embracing death, the ending of old things, in the way that is integral part of the cycle of, you know, vitality, you know, is to embrace that season of death and to, you know, work with it. And I definitely been feeling that, feel changes in, you know, just the different life changes that happen as well as part of like even a larger cycle than a year, you know. I'm getting on up towards 50 here, and I'm starting to feel, you know, it's interesting the way we've lived and died to different lives in this one life, you know.
Isn't it? Yep.
And to be connected with the plants and nature, natural time and season, you know, is such a vital way to, you know, like gain appreciation of that contrast, you know.
Indeed.
And all the plants and things die back, you know. We're still working with all our herbs to remind us of life, you know, and to just like remember, it's like not, that's part of the death cycle, I think, is just like that remembering too of like the vitality of spring coming and the newness that will come, you know, out of that. But yeah, it's a trip for sure.
Well,
And
you know what you're reminding me of, and this is my little cosmic jokester, my little weird inner jokester. Is like I had a mentor back in the day, and in regards to working with entheogens, right, and altered states of consciousness, and he would say to me, he's like, "What's the worst that'll happen? You'll die," you know, because some of us know that when we're in ceremonial states of consciousness, we've died a million times, let alone the figurative deaths and the poetic deaths that we've experienced in all these chapters of our lives. But it is to the point where I'm like, what's the worst that'll happen? We'll die. And then what do we get to do with that? So I even feel like going back to what y'all were asking about what herbs I've been working with to stay in the peace center. I'm like, even just working with seeds and loving them, like praying and loving seeds and thanking seeds and being in gratitude for the seeds that do come when the plant dies back. I don't know, for some reason I'm picturing a mullein stalk right now. You know, it's like all the leaves are crisped out and rotting down, and you got that crispy stalk, you know?
yes.
But
mullein seeds are interesting too. Like there's not a lot of conversation about mullein seeds specifically. I don't know if you've delved into working with them at all, what energies they have, what properties they share with the world. And, you know, I've heard things like using them for fishing, but it's illegal because, and it's not respectful either, in my opinion, because you can actually powder them, put them in the water, and the fish will
stuns the fish.
Get stunned. And so it's like a really strange thing that people figured out, where they can like harvest a lot of fish but not kill all of them. But even still, it's like it doesn't seem, you know, I suppose some people could find a right relationship with that, but I don't know. I don't know anything else really about mullein seed personally besides that.
I know you can eat it, you know.
I don't know about mullein seed as far as like its medicinal compounds or anything like that, but that's a really curious thing that I've never heard about, like a fish stunner. I know when I lived on the West Coast, it was the now I'm spacing buckeye, right? Is another one. There are lots of plants that have like quote unquote poisons, you know, that we use all the time. We work with, we're in relationship with all the time, and the adage you know, it's all in the dose, it's all in the intention, it's all where our attention goes with these compounds that changes, you know, the purpose and the point. But yeah, I don't know about mullein seeds in that way. I guess I was saying more just loving seeds, just giving things, just purely being like, thank you, seeds. I don't need anything from you. You're already doing so much, and showing me the way through the time, you know, this quiet time, and then trusting being falling into the earth and trusting that quiet, patient waiting for the next thing that's gonna bust that seed out into the light of day again. You know what I'm saying?
The imaginal potential.
There we go. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that's super beautiful. That's, you know, such a lovely thing to consider, you know, and just the magic in a seed, you know, there's, you know how it is working with plants, and nature always has like a metaphor or like a lesson, you know, and just this latent potential in this tiny little thing for this whole life cycle, you know, and the medicine and how many beings it you know, nurtures and feeds. And, you know, I think of also what comes to mind is, you know, we took Sage of Problems class, and he talks about it's better to know the 40 uses of one plant than the one use of 40 plants.
Sure.
That multiplicity, you know, that is in nature, in all things in nature, including us. It's like a reminder that you have within you like this infinite resource to surmount all of these, you know, challenges that we're going through collectively, you know, and just the beauty of the way plants can support us in that, you know, and remind us in that, like in the way of like you said, like seeds. That's super deep. I love it.
Mm. Well, even too, like I'm kind of staring out my window here, and I just, in the last, I guess, month and a half, I got a bird feeder, and I've been filling it with seeds and watching all the birds just, you know,
Yeah.
so pleased, so happy and joyous and celebratory, and their chatter and their singing all about these seeds, and then right beyond it, as I look out my window, there's a big ocotillo plant, you know.
Nice.
And for those that don't know, I mean, ocotillo, I feel like just like, because y'all don't have them up there, I think it's strictly kind of Sonoran Desert, right?
Yeah, in southern New Mexico, they grow like south of Albuquerque.
Okay.
You'll find them. Yeah.
So I'm gonna try, I don't have a picture of one, and I'd lose my signal if I walked outside, but they're, for those that don't know, they're like the iconic, next to the big saguaro cactus, you know, they're green.
Yeah.
I think I remember hearing somebody say that they were like the most utilized plants in film to portray alien landscapes.
That would make sense.
They're kind of Dr. Seussian, so everyone has, you know, the computer, they can look up ocotillo, but ocotillo, one of its strategies for thriving is it'll drop all of its, same with the Palo Verde tree, right? It's like they'll drop all their leaves, and they can live without leaves most of the year. And then as soon as it rains, it's just, they're in just immediate flourishing, limey delight, you know? So it's like they know how to let go when it's time to let go. And they know how to flourish when it's time to flourish. And I mean, there's so many things I could say about how much this landscape in itself teaches me, but ocotillo in itself, oh my God, what an amazing plant that's taught me so much, both in its like physical medicine and its poetry. Like, we could go on about.
Oh shit! I mean, you know, that's kind of the fun thing. You know, you're in Tucson in the Sonoran Desert, where it's a lot. You know, you have such a different desert than we have here in northern New Mexico. There's a lot of similar plants, like
the cholla.
You have cholla there, and
tons
prickly
of cholla.
pear.
Tons of prickly pear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have like Mormon tea, like ephedra?
You know what? We have ephedra on the other side of town, so I'm like far out on the west side, and we have kind of some different kind of microclimate than in the foothills at the base of Mount Lemmon and the Sky Islands and such. So on the other side of town, there's definitely ephedra. I've grown a plant before. I think it's a really interesting like, first aid plant. That's maybe people don't realize that, but yeah,
Yeah.
we have ephedra on the other side of town, just not over here.
How do you use it for first aid?
I think that it is nature's EpiPen.
Oh,
You know,
uh-huh.
because you know how so
Yeah.
ephedra or like Mormon tea is stimulating, and part of the way that it stimulates is it's like a surge of adrenaline. I don't enjoy it recreationally, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I've never used
so, but
it that
it's like,
potently.
what's that?
I've never used it that potently. I've only made mild tea out of it.
Yeah. I'm not
Yeah,
one for stimulants. Like I'm too stimulated as it is. I like
same,
nervies, you know.
same,
Yeah.
yeah, same.
Yeah.
But because it's stimulating by way of doing like an adrenaline surge, when we have a
Mm.
surge of adrenaline, that I mean y'all know when we have a surge of adrenaline that like pumps all of this energy, and it's like to be able to run from the tiger. So there's like a
Mhm.
huge surge of oxygen that'll go into the lungs. So I feel like if somebody's in anaphylactic shock, they're allergic to bees, oh no, they get stung, and EpiPens are what, like $500? You know, not everyone can afford an EpiPen, nor wants to use one.
Yeah.
So backup plan, you know, I'm like, I always keep a Mormon tea and a ephedra tincture in my first aid kit, so it'll just blast someone's lungs with oxygen, and then once I do that, then that's time to figure out,
That's
okay, that's first aid. Now, what am I going to do for second aid, third aid, fourth aid? Like, how are we going to resolve this?
mhm.
But it could save. I think. I mean, I'm not supposed to say this, right? But I think there's potential that it could be life saving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really important to know, though. It's one of those skills where, people say that herbal medicine isn't good for triage, so to speak, for like really intense acute situations. But I really do believe that it can be, and I don't understand how anybody could explain that humans have survived this long without that lineage of herbal medicine
Yeah.
helping to keep us, alive and thriving. So it's not,
Heck yeah.
it also has its emergency purposes and
I think of how many times
long-term purposes.
I think of how many times Yarrow has saved me. Like, just I'm always barefoot in the forest or working in the garden. I remember one time I was clipping plants and I clipped my finger
Huh?
badly with the clippers, and I just packed it with Yarrow right away, and it stopped. And how that was used for pretty serious wounds in the past, like really pretty heavy bleeding, serious bleeding. You
That's
know,
right.
uh,
Absolutely. I mean, I could go on and on and on about first aid plans. I feel like that was kind of my initiation and my bridge between uh, um, studying rites of passage and entheogens and being a psychonaut teenager studying plants and mushrooms, and then the first aid. That's a longer story, but the first aid plants were my bridge into getting real into practical herbalism.
mhm.
Practical. It's all practical, but but I mean, even I don't know. It's kind of a gruesome story, but there was a point in time. Should I say it? It's kind of a weird story. So anyone who's listening, just I don't know, get ready.
We like it.
Like,
Let's keep it real.
I'm keeping it real. There was a time where I was walking. This was maybe a decade ago, where I was walking home, and I had my house keys in my hand, and I was wearing those damn hiking boots that have the little like loop top. You
Oh,
know those little like metal loop tops on a hiking boots?
yes.
Yeah, right.
You
For
know
the
how sometimes the shoelace from the other gets caught in the other loop?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I face planted basically. I face planted and I had my keys in my hand, and my key went burp straight burp into my hand, and I unlocked my hand. And so
Unlocked my.
I unlocked my hand. So there was a point where then this is how my mind works. I was like, this is the perfect moment for me to test my skills. So I'm, less than a block away from home. I'm running home. I'm like, blah, it's a mess. I'm running home. I get home and I go straight to my altar because I know on my altar I had usnea, and I just like chew it up and just
Uh-huh.
stuff usnea in the wound, and
Mm-hmm.
immediately it stops bleeding, right? And I know usnea, old man's beer, it's a lichen, right? I know that that's also antimicrobial. So I stop the bleeding, and then I go on the computer and I'm like, okay, what are the signs of tetanus? And like I'm doing all this crazy research, you know, in the interim of like, okay, I've stopped this excess bleeding. I know I'm applying some kind of antimicrobial, lightweight antimicrobial thing. And then from there, I did the rest of my treatment, and you know, my hand is great. For like 2 months, I had to stop working as a professional chocolatier because I couldn't scoop truffles anymore. But look, it's fine
Yeah,
now. There's
that
That's
barely
sounds
anything
awesome.
to scar.
pretty vicious. I'm glad that you were able to do something about that and heal to the extent that you did.
Yeah, and I did a bunch of other things too. I ended up doing and it hurt like the dickens, but I had myrrh, and this is, again, it's in the heat of the moment, you got to think fast. So I had myrrh tincture,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, I'm gonna glue the wound back together, so I soaked it. I did a wound wash in thyme. I had thyme growing in the backyard. Get all the little bits of usnea out. And then I prepared myself mentally. I was like, this is going to hurt really bad, because it's alcohol going into a wound. But myrrh tincture, I was like, what resin do I have to glue this thing closed as opposed to getting stitches? I
Mm-hmm.
squeezed myrrh tincture on, sealed it up, and then went about my research as to how I wanted to further treat myself. And again, I'm not recommending everyone do this, but it worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a testament to um, that's one of my first aid stories of how I how I fixed how I treated my unlocked hand.
Yeah.
That's what I use pretty much for every wound I get because it happens to me so regularly um, uh, that I just blunder into stuff because I get you're out there in the woods and you got your head in the plants or you're looking for mushrooms or something. You got your focus like honed in,
Yeah.
stub a toe really bad or something, and I'll just try to find some yarrow and some pine pitch, and I'll use pine pitch instead of myrrh, and then maybe I'll use a dandelion leaf or something to just like kind of hold it on there,
Mm.
and it does miracles, And we had this little girl on one of our walks just recently, and she fell down and cut her knee, and I gave her a little yarrow, and she put it on there, and she was like, "Oh my gosh,
It
this is
stopped bleeding
amazing!"
right away. I was actually like down the trail a ways, and when I came back and she was like next to me,
Mm.
she's like, that guy gave me some yarrow and my cut stopped bleeding right away. She was so thrilled about it. She just thought it was magic. So I love it when you can see kids getting into it. Like the children really love this kind of thing. They're so connected, and you can just see that it's part of their intuition, and they know that the plants are their friends. And
And their magic.
yeah,
That's partly what I love about herbalism is that you kind of like get to be a kid in a lot of ways. Like
yeah,
to believe in magic, to climb trees, to walk around barefoot in the forest, and
make potions.
make potions and
Yeah.
all of the good stuff, and it's so natural to human beings, and we've just like removed ourselves from that process. And I think that's like there's so much medicine in that for these times, like all the challenges we're into, to just like be in connection with nature and with healing, the healing power of plants,
Mm.
and just you get this excitement about you. I think every herbalist has had this experience where it's so empowering and so exciting and thrilling that you just want to share it with everybody. You want to find a way, so we're wanting to step more into actually doing some free clinics and getting, because we've taught a lot of classes and we made tinctures and stuff for a long time, but we've maybe treated all of like 10 people, including ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
so just because we feel like our knowledge is growing enough that we can help people more, and
Mm.
it's kind of an inborn wish that starts to develop as you like care for yourself more and care for plants, like this habit and love for caring. And that's something that I love about the herbalism community, and like sort of the farmers and gardeners and growers and herbalists and stuff, is like we forget, like even the word husband is connected with husbandry.
True.
That a man can't give birth to a child, but we can nurture life in the form of plants and our families and animals. That's more natural to us as human beings than like sort of the division and the separation and the fear and stuff, is to actually seek to soothe and help other beings. And it's such a vibe.
I mean, and it just makes sense. And like there are so many ways that we dispense medicine, right? And I know, I can bop between the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere of the brain, the heart, the intuition, the instinct, like just what the hands want to do, what the feet want to do, and a lot of times I just come back around to something that you were saying, is just this, that when you were speaking on that inner child, like that spark of curiosity, for me at least, the spark of curiosity that I have from being in relationship to the land is the most life-giving thing I could have ever asked for, is to always remain curious. And to me, that's that spark and that spirit of possibility, of potential, of miracles, of faith, of all of these things that, in times where narratives can run harsh, that spark of curiosity and possibility and creation, even through destruction, that it's all one cipher. I mean, that to me is some of the biggest medicine that I've been gifted by being in relationship with nature and finding my inner nature through that, and same way, yeah, clinic sounds great. I totally am excited for you guys to do that if you want to do that, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Like it could be the yarrow clinic where like people just know to come to you for yarrow related things. I mean, even here on the ranch where I live, there are other places around, and everyone knows to knock on my door if they accidentally get stung by a scorpion or get taken out by a rattlesnake. They always know to come knock on my door. So here it's like I'm the venomous creature,
First aid.
like so from the small to the large, it all matters, and especially in this time too, it's like remembering how we can contribute to the village, whatever that means, human, non-human, all of it. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Being able to hold that space too for helping people remember and to come back to themselves and their own intuition. Because I think as healers, we're more like facilitators, where we help others find their own healing.
Yeah, we just
heal
like
themselves.
I think of like like a friend trying to hook up a couple or something like that, where it's you just like, here's this cool plant, and like the plant does the work, and the person, and you're just like there to like, share your experience and, knowledge and love of plants. And it's kind of juicy that way, and we're just like, we talk about this in our classes of like this whole experience of connecting with the plants is like, and with the people that come to our classes is this remembering, like the members of your, your body. There's these other parts of nature are a part of us, and it's like the members of your community are, similarly, it's like an extension of your physical body, actually. that we're all entangled on that quantum level, and just being of a place too. This whole thing of like, so there's such a hegemony, in our culture of like, you can go anywhere and go to like a Walmart or like a mall and have like the same experience. But if you actually tap into the land and the culture of the people in the land that you're at, and connect with the plants. Like when we go traveling, we're always like, okay, what kind of cool like new plants can we meet here, and what can we use, or like make into food or tea or stuff like that. And it's like, it's so much fun. It's just like when you go to a new place and you tap into the culture a little bit, and you feel like the juiciness of that culture connecting in with the plants of that place really, like, makes the experience more, just juicy.
Connective.
Yeah.
Well, there's that Bob Marley quote where he says like something. He says something like, "Get your culture," and from your culture you move to progress. And every time I hear that, I think about cultures as in like probiotic microbial cultures. It's always where I go in my mind. I'm like, get your culture, from your culture you move to progress. And so like when we eat of the land, when we taste of the land, when we ferment with the land, when we create with the land, like when we roll in the dirt of the land, we're literally bathing in the culture, the tiny microcosm culture, and that is an act of pure intimacy. That is an act of deep connection. That, I mean, we know that so much of the microbial zoo that we carry in our gut determines our neurotransmitters, like how we perceive the world, if we feel good about the world, bad about the world, sad about the world, happy about the world, and everything in between is so much fed by the little critters that we let flourish in our gut, that we invite in to our inner domain. So yeah, I always think about that, like, get your culture, from your culture you move to progress. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna make some sauerkraut right now, and I'm gonna get my culture. Like, I'm gonna ferment some prickly pears and make like a weird vinegar out of it, and it's not the best, but I'm gonna get my culture, and so there's that piece too, where it's from the smallest to the largest.
True.
Meshing in that way, I feel like, is a crucial act of that remembering, of that awakening process that's always there and available to us, all beings, all of us.
It's
Yeah.
true culture. I totally agree. And she likes to eat dirt. She'll just like, we have that cryptogamic dirt that grows. Do you know about cryptogamic soil? Here in New Mexico, we have these, the soil can be so sandy and so lifeless. There's not a lot of, organic matter. It takes like hundreds or even thousands of years for these microbes to grow this soil that they look like little crystal elven palaces.
I used to tell our kids they were fairy houses. When we were taking walks, I'd tell them, be careful, don't step on the fairy houses.
Because, this whole time, but sometimes she'll just take a little piece and just nibble it.
Yeah, it's, like people use zeolite clay, for instance. And I feel like every good farmer who's growing soil, they know about growing soil, first of all.
Taste your dirt.
They know about how that soil is connected to their own microbiome. And, so, if you are taking in the earth element, then you are furthering that connection to your culture, like you're just talking about. It's like, it's an acknowledgement of the unity consciousness. And I feel that, if we can step back into that, then we can, move forward in a more right state of mind and body and spirit, because we're, acknowledging that it's not just this body that's separated from nature and so on, that we're part of it, that we can be part of it, whether we're barefoot on the ground, ingesting the earth, breathing the fresh air, being out in the sunshine.
we get this whole
drinking the
path,
fresh spring water,
this whole earth, wind, fire, water path,
Yeah.
how it is with Ayurveda and like, herbs and stuff like this, and understanding that earth, wind, fire, and water are in all things, in different people's constitution, in the different plants, but also like physically, like touching the earth, or eating from the earth, eating out in the air, in the fresh open air, or the mountain air, or by a river or something where there's those negative ions that give you that really high quality air. And the more we can like entrain and learn and become through the connecting with the elements of earth, wind, fire, water, like it ennobles us, and that's there in the plants too. And they're, trying to, teach us through their, sort of doshic preponderances, and it's becomes this such a connective thing of this elemental consciousness, that like one of our teachers says, actually the elements of earth, wind, fire, and water have raised you more than your parents. They've nurtured your body, your physical body, your whole life. Your parents just joined chromosomes, and then that was like the spark, of your beginning. And even prior and during and after that, momentary time, it's just earth, wind, fire, water, and your relationship with it, and all beings, and that intimacy you're talking about. Like, I think we're here to live this like intimate, like place of opening, to the world, and that's what herbalism's been to me, for sure.
Being part of the world, being connected to the world. I really feel like pretty much all problems, including what I think is a huge root problem in the world, where we call it a problem, it's this fear of death. And that fear of death comes from that belief that we aren't connected, that there could be some form of disconnection. And so if we can help each other remember that we're part of nature, that we are connected, and the connections are infinite. It's just, depends on what resonates with any given person at any given time. But there's so many times when people come to our classes and they just start crying because they feel so much gratitude for that direction toward the connection. And
you're like, this is the way we're supposed to live. And that's exactly what we felt. It's like, this is every human being's, divine right, and heritage, that we're all indigenous, in a way. I mean, we're all from this planet. We all have lineages that go back to this lifestyle interconnected with nature, and to kind of, that's what we really love, is trying to, bring that back, nurture that back into being, in our community. But
well, and there's like, y'all just made my mind went in so many directions at once, because like, for example, I mean, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole path, but the program that has been run around like carbon, we're talking about being in right relationship with the elements, earth, air, fire, water, or metal, or ether, or whatever version of the elements people work with. And if we look at the periodic table and we look at the element carbon, we know that that's 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, 666. So it's like there's these certain programs that are run, right, to even on a subconscious level, to unhinge sometimes folks from that relationship with the elements and the elemental nature of all things. I mean, and I had a student here yesterday, and we were talking about the fire element. And when I think about humanity's relationship to fire, I think nowadays that's probably the least honored, or the least acknowledged element, maybe perhaps, as that fire gazing or sun gazing or any of these things. I think you know, once upon a time, and certainly still to this day in certain places, people were looking at a fire and gazing into the fire every single night as they're cooking their meal, or certain things, or if they're tanning their hides, right? They're smoking the hides. They have to stoke the fire first. And so I think about, I've been thinking about the that missing piece of our relationship to being with fire and being in right relationship with fire, fire in the hearth, not fire out of control, right? And I think a lot of us, how does that translate to our inner fire? You know, whether that looks like alchemy and transformation, whether that looks like passion, whether that looks like anger, whether that looks like rage. I feel like perhaps there's some connection there about how people are in relationship to some of these big feelings that could be fiery, and and the sort of disconnect from, you know, being with the bonfire and being humbled by the power and potency of that element in particular, you know.
Totally. I mean, you know, people suppress, you know, anger, you know, and you know, sort of that element of fire,
Or they
instead
feel
of
it in
acknowledging
imbalance, too.
that it's that there's a reason for it, and that be able to be in connection with it as to channel it appropriately. I'm a triple Aries, so I really resonate with the fire energy, you know, and I sun gaze every morning, and you know, I was kind of a power maniac when I was a kid, you know, and just, you know, but to learn to respect fire, you know, and to, you know, there's a little bit of fear you should have with all of the elements, actually, you know, in terms of just respect, you know, not they can ennoble you and give you, you know, this vitality, but part of that comes from understanding their potency. And
Well, and like anger, fear is an emotion that we, you know, really don't understand in our culture. We don't understand what it feels like in our body, and how to interact with it, use it as a language. And I, you know, anger and fire are directly related. Fear, I think, is more of like a watery emotion, and you know, but of course all the elements do have the connections with the emotions, and because fire can be very happiness inducing, and so can water, so can air, and
in terms of herbalism, you know, it's like that whole thing of the water element and fear's connection with the liver, and your liver connected to the urinary tract and the kidneys.
And the liver's also connected with anger.
Yeah. And, or, you know, just the way the herbs work in the body, and the way that we can use them to help balance not just our physical body, but our emotional body, you know. I think I've been working a lot with fasting and meditation, you know, and those have been like two of my major staples for the last several years, you know, and major rocks of, you know, sort of foundation, you know.
Very air element.
And so
modalities.
It's just interesting the way, you know, they talk about that in the evolutionary herbalism class we took, you know, of how all the herbs have these organ affinities, but that also means they have this correlation with the elements, you know, depending on, you know, like the salty taste and its, you know, the mineral density of things like nettles and that earth element, and how that, you know, builds your bones and your blood, and, you know, that sort of earth foundation, you know, and you know, rose family, and you know, like cayenne, anything red, and its affinity for like your heart and your blood, and you know, just to key into these elementals in the plants and in our own bodies and in our psyche beyond that is such a path of power, you know. But anyway, we could go like so many directions all day. I would totally want to like dive in with you about, you know, your experience with consciousness, and you know, the you know, psychoactive plants, you know, because that's been a huge formative part of my experience too. But I wanted to ask you before, I don't know how we're doing on time because I want to respect your time, but just had in mind, what are 2 or 3 of your favorite plants from where you are?
Ah, I mean, that's always the thing where I'm like, how could I say such a thing?
Right.
How
It's
could I
like,
choose
who's your favorite child? Yeah.
Well,
yes,
that's why I asked, like, what are you resonating with right now? Like,
Yeah.
today? Okay, today,
Today.
2 or 3 plants that I love that I can see out my window. Well, I love the Ocotillo, and I want to actually shout out Surplus Valentine in the chat here. I see you. I see what you're writing. Shout out to Ocotillo, Fockiera splendens. Um, Absolutely in love with this plant. I mentioned earlier that it's a great teacher for me. Um, Shout out to, who do I want to give? Well, shout out to Chaparral. Shout out to Lorea tridentata, of course. How could we not give a shout out to that plant? I can't choose though.
I know.
I
I
can't
know.
choose.
Yeah. I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, what do I want to share, with the community about which 2 or 3 plants? And I was like, my mind just started rolling through hundreds of plants, of course, and that's part of the other fun thing about herbalism. We always like to share this concept of pronoia instead
Mm,
of paranoia,
mm.
that the universe is conspiring in your favor. And when you learn the plants, you see the vast majority of them are food or medicine. There's very few that are poison, and we can even use those as medicine, like as you mentioned before, dosage, and for the right symptoms.
Well, and
But
that's the thing too, is like ex exploring outside the confines of our anthropocentric state where something may be poison to me and quote unquote and may be totally regenerative to the land. Or, for example, too, like chiltepin peppers, really spicy to me. Birds love just eating them, eating tons of them off the bush all day. You know what I'm saying? So,
or poison ivy. Poison ivy keeps people off the pathways and regenerates the soil, and yeah, it's kind of poisonous to us.
I've heard of native people in our area actually using it internally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you guys know a gal named Ramona, what's her last name? She's out in the Bay Area, Ramona Rubin. I remember her telling me, and again, I'm not recommending this to
Yeah.
None of
those
this
on
is
Instagram Live,
medical advice. Yeah.
but Ramona, I know she told me that she would eat tiny, 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 tiny bits of poison oak root slowly over years and got to a point where she can fully brush up against it and doesn't have any sort of allergic response.
Yeah.
Now, again, take it or leave it, right? That's not going to be the right thing for everyone necessarily, but yeah, that's like definitely a big foundational, or like core, or like a big part of the heart of my work and my love of the plant realm and the mushroom realm and all of this is exploring, and that's where entheogenic plants and mushrooms have helped me, right? Is exploring beyond the perspective of just this human observer alone and this human utilizer alone, but also like, what is it like for the plant? How does the plant dispense its medicine to the landscape? How does the plant dispense its medicine to the wildlife? How do I dispense my medicine to the land? And all of these things, right? This sort of like constant flowing relational nature of things. And even like, to circle back around to Ocotillo, I feel like I'll stay on Ocotillo so I don't go crazy off the rails, but like, there was a I was sitting and observing Ocotillo this past summer, and I had this huge revelation where, I'm in an open state of consciousness, and I was asking the plant, I was like, what does it feel like to be you? What does it feel like to be you, Ocotillo? Show me, tell me, let me feel what it's like to be you. And my awareness was brought from the inside out into the body of the Ocotillo branch. And Ocotillo has all these thorns, right? So from an outside humanoid perspective, I see the thorns and I think defense mechanism, but from inside the Ocotillo, I felt this branching out of this surface area. And I felt that for the Ocotillo to have thorns is to be more sensitive to the wind. And it just, this notion that, so many people will say, oh, Ocotillo is spiritual barbed wire, it's a protection plan. And I'm like, yeah, it's that. But also for the Ocotillo, it allows it to feel that much more in the landscape, to be that much more in tune and in touch with the breeze and in touch with the movement that's happening all around it. And how does that perspective shift transform my understanding of this plant? For example, right?
I love that.
Yeah, it's fun, and that's the funny thing, because everything out here in the desert, or 80% of things have thorns, right? And I think people get spooked. People get spooked by that when they're not from here. And first and foremost, I'm like, that's what we were talking about earlier, is that not that fear per se, but that sort of commanding presence that asks of us to be in our bodies. It asks of us to be extra present and have this present embodied awareness when we move in relationship with these beings. And then, but same way, recalibrating my relationship to what is thorn from the inside out rather than from the outside in. That's like, I need this plant, I'm going to utilize it like an industrial, worker. Everything must have a purpose for me. And like, to me, that's so, I see it in the field of herbalism all the time, where it's like this sort of mechanical mindset, the mechanical clock mindset put upon these beautiful plants and these beautiful fungi. And so I'm interested in unhinging from that. I'm interested in exploring beyond that perspective,
100%. We can totally use plants in the allopathic method and like the sort of Cartesian, dualism or rationalism, but it's so much more complex and so much like more emotionally related. Like if we think of the plants as some of our most ancient ancestors, like you wouldn't go to your grandma and be like, Grandma, what are you good for? What can we use you for? Right? Like you have these deeper connections with hopefully, loving relationship with your grandmother, your grandfather, and the way, they nurtured, your soul, nourished your soul.
And then also we observe from our grandparents what they teach us, right? When we're walking through the garden with them or whatever. And it's the same with plants when you're observing, like you just said with the Ocotillo, the thorns on the Ocotillo. It's kind of like that, it's a reflection of our bodies, and even just being embodied in your own self. Like for some reason it brought to mind, like, we have hair on our bodies, and as women in the culture, we are taught that it's not okay. Like we see the thorny plants in the desert and we're like, oh my gosh, scary thorns,
You see a hairy woman.
People are like that with women in this Western culture, not like in Europe and other smaller cultures in the world, but they're like, ooh, hairy woman, But it's
I'll
like,
probably display my pits right now. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's like we have these aspects of our bodies, just like the plants, that are there for a reason. And we are taught to dislike certain parts of it and run from certain parts of life, and, just not acknowledge a lot of these things. And so I feel like this conversation about plants and with plants, and I would like to say fungi, minerals, and animals, and the whole of Earth, right? The whole of the cosmos. I think it all comes with great responsibility, and that also brings you back to what I was thinking when, you know, several times we've been talking about this entheogenic conversation. There's not a lot of responsibility and foresight or insight in what's going on right now with that sort of being introduced into the quote unquote legal realm so that people have more access to it. A lot of people are trying to explore with these plants or these entheogenic friends of ours that and they don't have the guidance. And I think that because we as herbalists, you know, we know certain things about these things, I feel like it is our responsibility to encourage that in others, to let people know that this isn't something that we just play around with, and how to lovingly go into it and come back out of it, because, you know, that way we minimize a lot of the psychological damage that's going on with a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I heard that this plant was good for me, so I'm going to ingest it. And then they're like, oh my gosh, that experience was really scary.
Well, and yeah, using it like in an allopathic sense, like something is really going on with me bad and I need some strong medicine, so I'm going to go on an ayahuasca journey. And then they come back without any integration, you know, or what have you, or, you know, they go with someone who's not really good with creating a setting, and, you know, or they smoke DMT or whatever, and like, you know, then they're like blasted out into like the furthest reaches of like the inner cosmos, and then to come back into this. I remember that in one of my first really strong mushroom journeys, like being up in the mountains and feeling like I just touched this hugely broader perspective and this, you know, fire within me and within all of nature, and it was so connective and amazing. And then I had to go back to town, you know, and I just felt it like this vacuum, like sucking, you know, energy, you know, and I like really valued that experience, but it took me a really long time to integrate, you know, and I had to learn those things kind of the hard way. And I think that's what a lot of us are going through, is like this exploration, but without, you know, the guidance of ancestors, you know, like
the shaman or the grandma or the herbalist teacher. So
I have so many thoughts and feelings about all of that I'm like catching myself because I have to go to an appointment soon, but I have so many thoughts and feelings about that, and they're at times paradoxical, my thoughts and feelings, in the sense that there is this deep honor and respect and humble that I feel in the presence of these great teachers of these sacred plants and these sacred fungi. And I feel so protective. I feel like a protective little mama bear, like you know, and yet at the same time, something that I've been exploring is trusting that there is an intelligence in those plants and those fungi that knows what to do. Now, not everyone's gonna have a great time, you know. Not everyone is going to understand what's going on. We are just wee little immature babies in the grand scheme of things. And, you know, again, I could say a million things, and I'm in multiple directions at once on this one. But when I look at the different traditional contexts worldwide of how people engage with these plants and fungi that we call entheogens, oftentimes it's not something that people do alone. It's something that people work with in community, and there's a context and there's a protocol in community. Now, if people are working with these things alone and they're like an ordeal medicine, if you will, or a rite of passage, there's a huge amount of preparation that's involved pre and post encounter. But yeah, so one piece I feel that we're just like we immature babies in the game is we, as in like those of us who maybe have become unhinged from our lineages or ancestral, you know, traditions, is thinking that we have have to go at it like these conqueror explorers, like, I'm going to go into the dark and I'm going to figure this shit out, and as opposed to, this is a community engagement where we're going to move our bodies together, we're going to dance together, we're going to process the emotions that come up, not through some like talky clinical white-walled, office space where it's allowed, but
Right.
through the intelligence that's not just of this chatty thing, but the entire body, and not just this body, but the body of the community, where we can reflect to each other, support each other, hold each other in a good way. So, I mean, there's a freaking million things I could say.
We'll have to do another live.
Yeah.
And the bottom line, like if I were to say it in a nutshell, is like the tool and the weapon is the same dang thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
we have to, and that goes for a lot of things, right? The tool and the weapon is the same damn thing. So we got to decide how we want to wield the power and the potency of something like psilocybe mushrooms just as much as the power and the potency of a freaking pomegranate, which I happen to have right next to me. Like
Yeah.
they all have power, they all have potency, they all have medicine, they all have intelligence, they all have a sacredness, they all have a story, and we can aim that for good, we can aim that for not as good, right? And like that's what I'm talking about in this Forbidden Fruits class series I'm doing right now, is like, when did this become wicked and evil and dealing with underworld, like who decided that? So the tool and the weapon are the same thing, whether we're talking about the most ass-kicking entheogens or the most humble and simple of chamomile tea, all of it.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
It
all changes our consciousness.
Right.
The chemistry, literally, and I've heard of some herbalists working, like with vision medicine just being normal, plants. It could be yarrow or plantain, or
It's all about our relationship.
You
That's
can
what it comes
have
back to.
a very profound. I've even heard of. There's a lady who, wild harvested some chicken of the woods mushrooms, and because of her unique biochemistry, she had a full-blown psychedelic experience just eating chicken of the woods. So the way we interact, having this more intimate, personalized interaction with creation, is going to open up, so much for humanity if we can kind of like take the blinders off, and sort of become vulnerable and open to the possibility that these things can do in terms of transmuting and changing our consciousness.
And having sacred intention and sacred boundaries and respect and responsibility. So, and I see that in you. I really appreciate what you bring and offer the world, and look forward to seeing more of your class offerings and maybe even teaching together in the future. I've had a dream about that since we first met.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really want to keep the conversation going, and we should revisit it again soon. But where can people find you? We have a class coming up this Saturday. You mentioned the class as well, so
you can find me in the ethers. You can find me in the.
We're always there, right?
You can find me in your dreams. No, thank you. I'm super grateful to both of you, and like thanks for inviting me to engage in a public tea time. And
Absolutely.
yeah, my biz, which it's not a business, the work that I do is under the title Black Sage Botanicals. So that's me here on IG, and I have a website, Black Sage Botanicals. I have a Patreon, Black Sage Botanicals.
And
I have a class here. Huh?
And she makes amazing herbal candies and chocolates and things. I gotta order some of your stuff.
Absolutely.
I want to send you guys a care pack. Yeah, I mean, and the whole thing with the candy was like, not everyone wants to take like a crazy ass intense tasting tincture, and learning from my grandma, it's like if you can make something delicious, people will engage with it. So then all of a sudden, now I'm making people tremella mushroom truffles, and they're like, wait, what? What's tremella mushroom? This tastes really good. I'm like, guess what? I'm going to tell you about tremella mushroom. So, but yeah, so I'm teaching right now a class series called Forbidden Fruits, and this Friday is our second session all about pomegranate. I've been like deep in the pomegranate realms. But it's so much more, everything I do is so much more than the literal. There's like so much subtext and figurative storytelling going on as we talk about mythology, chemistry, history, botany, all of these things. So yeah, people can check me on IG and like please join in class if you want to join in. There's recordings if you miss them. So that's, yeah, there's a million things, but yeah, that's me.
Awesome.
That's what I'm up to right now.
Great.
Well, we want to respect you. What are you gonna say?
That's okay. I'll be slightly late. What class are you guys teaching on Saturday?
It's gonna be herbal energetics, for diagnostics and formulation. Just getting people acquainted with these concepts and how to feel the herbs and what they're gonna do for you.
Nice.
Gonna try to lead people in blindly with just tasting and what do they call it? Organoleptics or organoleptics?
Organoleptics.
There you
Yeah.
Go.
The senses.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So that'll be Saturday here at our place, at our permaculture playground.
Up in northern New Mexico, everybody.
Yeah. Where my ancestors have been for a long time. So, and we can be found at ziapermaculture.com. And we have our events posted on Eventbrite, but people can always reach out to us through our website or our email, which is connected on our website. So yeah, ziapermaculture.com.
Cool. Well, lots of love to y'all. Lots of love to you and the family and the land. And to be continued.
Yes.
All right. Beautiful. Thanks again for joining, Ash. Thank you, everyone. I hope you got something from this. And everyone have a beautiful day.
All right. Give thanks.
Woo. Blessed love.
Be well. One love.